If people continue to be this pissed off regarding migrants, I don't see Democrats winning next year.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today.
Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and a contingent of New York representatives were shouted down at a conference outside of the Roosevelt Hotel discussing the New York City migrant crisis.
A congressional delegation arrived in New York City today to assess the migrant crisis hitting the region.
Lawmakers toured facilities and met with city officials to discuss the response to new arrivals. New York Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says there are three takeaways from today. Municipalities need more federal funding, asylum seekers need their status expedited, and they need to be able to work.
They are prevented from getting jobs, they are prevented from employment, and that is part of the strain on our public systems. The faster that folks can access the work that they're asking for legally, the better we can solve this problem.
All right, joining us now is CBS News New York reporter Alice Gaynor. Alice, so we heard a bit of the shouting in the background there as Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez was speaking. But tell us, first of all, a bit more about what brought lawmakers there today. What did they see exactly, and what were they trying to accomplish?
Sure. They took a tour of the Roosevelt Hotel here, and we could not bring cameras along for that tour due to privacy issues. But they came outside after, and they described to us what they saw during that tour. They said they were impressed by the way agencies had set things up here for these asylum seekers. These were lawmakers not just from New York, but also from Texas, from Illinois, from California. They want this firsthand look. They want to be able to talk to these asylum seekers, talk to the agencies here, so that they can learn how to better advocate for more federal solutions that are so desperately needed here right now. And speaking with New York Congressman Jamal Bowman after, he simply said that there needs to be more collaboration and better communication, something we've heard that has been severely lacking during this crisis.
So as you mentioned, there were some protesters, what seemed to be protesters outside of that press conference this morning. What can you tell us about that?
It was extremely loud. Some of those protesters actually remain outside of the hotel here. They were drowning out lawmakers. It was very difficult to hear when they were giving this news conference. Some of the things they were shouting included close the borders. You know, at all of these shelters, we've seen protesters, in particular on Staten Island, when we've covered some of the shelters that have opened over there as well. And it seemed like they actually ended the news conference a little bit early due to just how loud it was out here. But there were police officers keeping the peace.
Alice, I wonder more broadly, how do lawmakers plan to work with the city to address these issues surrounding resources for migrants in New York City?
Well, as you mentioned earlier before you threw to me, there were three things they said that they had a consensus on today. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said that they all agreed they were going to look for increased federal resources. They also want to work on work authorizations. That's something we've been hearing from asylum seekers themselves here. That's why they came to this country. They want to get jobs. They want to provide a better life for their family. And right now they can't legally get jobs due to having to wait about 150 days before they can legally do so. And Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez actually said they're also looking for an extension of temporary protected status for Venezuelans so they can also get to work as well.
All right, Alice Gaynor for us in New York City. Alice, thank you.
environmental disasters. We see so many stories, heartbreaking stories, manifest itself here. But I think these are contentious issues. But we are all Americans, and we all believe in the American dream. That's the common denominator. The American.
Just walk freely in this country. How about that? You're blocking traffic. You're blocking traffic. Excuse me, you're impeding my way. Move.
AOC and SBI, you're a disgrace to the Hispanics. You're a disgrace to the Hispanics. You don't represent
Legal versus illegal petition.
I got it. Don't worry about me, bro.
Close the border. They are not true asylum petitions. They are economic migrants.
Subcommittee Ranking Member Jayapal, those are hundreds of our colleagues. The urging administration is also
Association is that they need people to work.
Can you make a statement on the mayor said that this was here at the Roosevelt Hotel? We haven't seen reports of that at this specific site that we've witnessed right now, but we will continue to remain vigilant, work and receive information from grassroots communities, migrant families themselves, mutual aid organizations, and more. But right now, I think our main focus is the federal response, so that we have resources and a path to citizenship necessary, or a path to documentation necessary.
And Mayor Eric Adams said that the city wouldn't cater to...
I have to run.
Thank you.
Open it up.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's what is there? What is this here then? Yeah, barriers for who? For who? For us? For the United States? Now you come down. You're complicit in destroying our city. You come down, you oath breaker. You gotta go to sleep at night. Hey, motherfucker, you motherfuckers are causing this division. Come here. It's all coming to you, motherfuckers. You think you're something special? How is that bringing unity to this nation when you're taking care of illegal immigrants over your own citizens? You're trampling on our
Close the border! Close the border!
Look at this country.
They are illegal aliens. They are
Illegal aliens! That's what they are, illegal aliens! Illegal aliens!
You better follow the law. My family's been waiting 7 years. 7 long
Sort this country out!
7 years.
¡Tienen todo gratis! ¿Qué pasa cuando todo el mundo sabe que Queens va a ganar todo gratis?
Gracias a los latinos.
nuestro problema.
¿Sabes algo? No me hable de tu dolor.
It's socialism. We just went through lockdowns, right? We're for legal immigration. We're not for illegal immigration. Mayor Adams and Joe Biden are the largest human traffickers in all of existence. There is a line, the logistical support that these people need to walk 7 countries over here. And they don't have to get vaccinated. They don't have to be checked for anything. While our fire department, our police, everybody was fired. Teachers lost their livelihood.
License. These are not e-bikes. These things can go 150 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour. They need to be registered. We was at City Hall yesterday. We're encouraging all the council members to support these.
Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was a part of a group of New York representatives who decided to go to the Roosevelt Hotel to take a look at the conditions of the migrants who were staying at this hotel, which has been converted into an intake facility for migrants. Now, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and members of this congressional group, which included Representative Gerald Nadler and Adriana Espaillat, decided to come out of the hotel after their tour, they decided to have a press conference where they hoped to go out here and make this into an event to show how concerned they are for the migrants. And as they were going out here looking to present their talking points, they ran into a hostile crowd of New Yorkers who basically shouted them down as they looked to try to go out here and spin this event into one where they were showing how they were trying to get things under control regarding the migrant crisis here in New York City. Now, here in New York City, we've had a migrant crisis for over a year, ever since Texas Governor Greg Abbott began busing individuals to sanctuary cities like New York, and mayors like Eric Adams have been, in the beginning, saying that they would be able to handle taking care of all of these migrants using city services. However, by March of 2023, the mayor found himself overwhelmed by just 30,000 migrants and found his whole system of city services about to collapse under the sheer number of individuals requesting help and services from the city of New York, as the shelter system basically became overtaxed and there was basically no place to house many of these migrants. And as a result, the city had to go out here and lease space in the defunct Roosevelt Hotel and make it into an intake center. And as they tried to go out here and rent all of this space, this is where the mayor waged a campaign to try to discourage migrants who had been watching TV shows like Seinfeld, Sex and the City, and Friends, and wanted to come to New York for opportunities. But this basically backfired and led to individuals winding up sleeping on the streets. And as this turned into a public relations disaster for New York Mayor Eric Adams, it basically started to cause an impact so deep that it was starting to affect other members of the Blue Party, including New York Governor Kathy Hochul and President Joe Biden. And the whole situation has deteriorated so badly that the Biden administration now is questioning Eric Adams' competence as related to handling the situation. And as a result, now we have the Congress people from New York coming down to see this situation. But as they tried to spin the situation to show how much they were caring about the situation, many people in a crowd protesting the migrant crisis went out here and expressed their anger towards the complete mismanagement of the situation and shouted back at these New York Congress people to let them know that they were not buying the narratives they wanted to spin. Now, the narratives that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Adriana Espaillat wanted to spin was that they were looking to help the migrants, and they were also looking to go out here and help all of these migrants and be able to assimilate into the country. And that was something that many New Yorkers in that crowd of protesters took offense to, because here were individuals who entered the country illegally, and as these individuals entered the country illegally, what they were doing were being leapfrogged over many New Yorkers, including veterans, many who served their country, and many of those individuals could not get any of the services that these migrants are receiving, and many New Yorkers took that as a complete disrespect. Moreover, many working class New Yorkers also took it as an affront, and they took it as an affront because many working class New Yorkers who are struggling from paycheck to paycheck to make their ends meet feel like they have been left behind, whereas many of the members of the Blue Party have been rolling out the red carpet for the migrants, and that was shown to them when New York Mayor Eric Adams got up on a bus to go out here and greet those migrants. However, New York Mayor Eric Adams expressed contempt for New Yorkers back in 2021 when he took office and implemented continuing the vaccine mandates of Bill de Blasio that denied over 1 million New Yorkers to work, instead of helping out working class New Yorkers be able to make a living as we were coming out of a pandemic. Eric Adams basically made it harder for many working class New Yorkers who wound up losing their jobs due to those mandates, and many who are still struggling to pick their lives back up after the pandemic. And that's where we get this tone deafness and disconnect from most of the members of the Blue Party, who want us to sympathize with the migrants, not seeing how they have basically destroyed the lives of many working class New Yorkers, and how they've basically given no helping hand to many of our homeless. And this is really reprehensible when you consider all of our homeless veterans, men and women who served our country and put their lives on the line. And instead of them receiving the best, like the GI Bill was supposed to provide them, these soldiers who served their country are being put last, just like many working class Americans. And instead of looking to stand up for the average, everyday working class American who is dealing with trying to rebuild their lives after the pandemic, after mandates that denied many, especially Black Americans, their jobs, and also many people who wound up losing their jobs as related to the pandemic, what we get are told to be sympathetic to individuals who entered the country illegally, individuals who we are told are supposed to be made a priority, individuals who are being put first before Americans and American citizens. And this is where American citizens got so angry that they came down to the Roosevelt Hotel, and those Americans expressed their First Amendment right to protest to the point where they wanted to go out here and shout down these representatives because they feel these representatives are not representing them or looking to serve the people they vote for. No, the way Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Adriana Espaillat were speaking was extremely disrespectful to all of those American citizens, like our working class New Yorkers, who are told that they are going to have to take less city services for the taxes they pay, and those homeless individuals, especially our veterans, who are told they are going to be put last, whereas an individual who entered this country illegally is given a free cell phone, given an EBT card, given free food and a place to stay. But a homeless American family and a homeless American veteran who served his country or her country, they can't get any of these amenities, and that is the ultimate form of disrespect directed at New Yorkers, and that is why New Yorkers turned out and turned up to the point where they were shouting down these congresspeople, and these tone-deaf congresspeople basically got an earful from New Yorkers. And when I look at this situation, it really shows me how this whole migrant situation has really turned on the Blue Party and turned to be the biggest debacle as related to their tenure in Congress. Now, they managed to skirt things in 2022 by going out here and playing on people's emotions regarding abortion, but this migrant whole crisis may be the thing that leads to the inevitable fall of this party like it did in 1994, because the tone deafness as related to not hearing we the people and disrespecting we the people, this could be the thing that winds up turning people from being blue voters to indie voters, because I don't know if it'll be red voters, it could be indie voters, because New Yorkers don't see themselves getting tangibles from these congresspeople who clearly don't see that they serve we the people. No, the way they were talking was like they were serving themselves and how they were living in their own world and not really living in the world of we the people, who have had to deal with not only the aftermath of a pandemic, jab mandates that denied us an opportunity to work, and also having to deal with inflation, which has driven up the prices all across the country and made it harder for the average everyday American to be able to live, and all due to policies from the Biden administration, like the American American Rescue Plan, which hasn't really rescued Americans. No, it's just screwed Americans over by giving them more taxes, and there's also proposals to give Americans more taxes in order to go out here and be able to pay for migrants. These are some of the proposals presented by members of the Blue Party who cannot see the anger of many of their residents, and many of their residents are expressing the same anger that many others were out here expressing back in 2022. Now, this anger is something that many really got a first eye look at as they were shouted down, but as they were sitting there talking, they really showed how disconnected and tone deaf they were, because as I listened to Adriana Espaillat sitting there talking about getting migrants jobs, this really made me angry, because I wound up losing my job at City College back in 2008 at the beginning of the Great Recession, and I have not found a full-time job in almost 15 years, and I've gone out here living in New York applying to basically every job all across this city, and even though I've gone on interviews, I haven't gotten many offers, even though I've got a college degree in business, and I've got years of experience running different things like my SJS direct imprint on the side. I have been looking for full-time work, and you have politicians who we're supposed to be represented by saying that migrants need work. Well, I have been needing a full-time job since 2008, and I have not gotten any offers, but all I've gotten is a lot of resistance, and all I run into are what they call the HR brick wall. But these same people will go out here and open a door for a person who entered the country illegally and give them a job. And again, that is a disrespect to me, a longtime person who has been registered to vote, and it's a disrespect to many New Yorkers who are in worse conditions, because many of those million New Yorkers who wound up losing their jobs due to jab mandates and people that Eric Adams went out here and fired with contempt. I mean, many of those New Yorkers who he fired as related to not taking that jab, he went out here and saying, oh, I'm opening up the door for those migrants. Again, flagrant disrespect directed at New Yorkers, contempt shown to us by the people we elected to represent us, and instead of representing our interests, they look to represent themselves and are so caught up in their ideals of looking to, virtue signal to spite Donald Trump, not seeing all of the millions of people whose lives they have been destroying with their policies. Again, not really listening to we, the people. No, they want to go and tell us what they think we want to hear, but people ain't hearing this nonsense anymore. No, people ain't hearing these leftists and their whole thing talking about the poor migrants, when most Americans are struggling, and many New Yorkers are struggling in a city that is basically overwhelming many working class folks with high taxes and high crime, and people not seeing where their money is going except to be spent on people who basically didn't follow the laws of our federal government. Again, that's a disrespect directed at most Americans who went out here and have been putting in work to try to achieve the American dream, to be told somebody who came into the country illegally has a right to an American dream. Well, what about the average, everyday, working American? Why don't we have a right to an American dream? Critical question I would like to ask many of those politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Adriana Espaillat and Gerald Nadler. What about the American dream of New Yorkers like myself who are struggling to go out here and find a way to make a living. Why put these people who came into the country and didn't follow the rules ahead of people who are citizens who have been out here putting in the efforts to build ourselves up legitimately? I mean, what I saw at that news conference was disrespect, and what I saw was a populace of Americans who are fed up with being disrespected by a government that is supposed to be by the people, but not doing anything for the people and not really looking out for the people. All I saw was a group of detached, disconnected politicians who were living in their own world, living with their own sort of distorted, rose-colored reality, where they wanted to believe that they could go out here and talk about these migrants and try to make these migrants into the people who were suffering so badly, but not hearing the suffering of Americans. And when I look at this whole migrant crisis, it really reminds me of 1980 with Jimmy Carter. I mean, Jimmy Carter basically was a guy who came into office like Joe Biden and wanted to go out here and say he wanted to help Americans, but instead of helping Americans, his efforts basically fell completely apart because of the disconnect and detachment of Washington from the rest of the world. And as Americans were suffering through recessions and the economic downturns of the 70s, they basically got tired of politicians like Jimmy Carter and gave him the boot in 1980 for Ronald Reagan. And the same thing is happening here, the same type of disconnect that I'm seeing from this entire contingent of Congress people who just again want to tell many of the working class Americans about migrants and how bad things there are for them, but don't want to give tangibles to working class New Yorkers, don't want to go out here and admit that they've gone out here and disrespected New Yorkers in their obsessive virtue signal to try to go out here and show Donald Trump. And again, showing how Donald Trump is deep in their heads, like with the beta male who is out here trying to compete with the bad boy for the attention of a girl. What has happened here is Donald Trump is in their heads, and they're thinking, oh, we want to go out here and show how we're not Donald Trump. But by ironically showing you're not Donald Trump, the irony is you're showing that you're not really competent at being able to manage the state of our union. Because these Biden administration policies as related to the border have been a complete failure, and they've been proven to be a complete failure by Greg Abbott, who has basically shown us that these sanctuary cities are not economically sustainable, and as these sanctuary cities have not been economically sustainable, what has happened is there's no room to virtue signal because there are no economic resources that can be allocated to take care of illegals and taxpayers, and it's an affront to taxpayers to go out here and put them last and treat them like second-class citizens in their own country because you got overwhelmed because many of these politicians like Eric Adams wrote checks they couldn't cash, and as the cream of wheat man went out here and tried to go out here and jive his way out of the situation, he found that people weren't hearing his jive, and this is where people wound up putting distance between Eric Adams, and then eventually the Biden administration threw him under the bus, and now they're trying to spin their way out of the situation, but what they're running into is the anger of New Yorkers, again, members of the Blue Party, and they can't spin this as these are Trump supporters. No, these are average, everyday working New Yorkers who voted blue no matter who, and now that they're getting screwed, many of these New Yorkers are just fed up, and they're fed up because they see that this whole political game of virtue signaling is a complete failure, and it's a failure that's costing them their quality of life, something that Greg Abbott tried to tell people about these border towns who have been dealing with a decline in their quality of life because the Biden administration didn't want to do what Donald Trump did, propose in trying to set a hard boundary for the safety of Americans as related to setting a hard boundary as related to our border. And we really do need to have a tangible boundary as related to our border, because right here in New York is where we had 9/11, and we had 9/11 because of terrorists coming into the country. And again, we really should be looking to vet these migrants through a legal process, and we should be looking to vet these migrants through a legal process, because we wouldn't want to have another terrorist attack because we had migrants coming into the country unvetted and unchecked. We wouldn't want that to happen because that's a threat to national security. Unfortunately, many of the blue politicians are so caught up in their feelings about Donald Trump that they're not thinking critically about the threat of an open border. And that's why people shouted down these politicians, because they see the threat of an open border to not only the quality of life of New Yorkers, but a threat to the safety of New Yorkers as related to national security. So this whole situation at the Roosevelt Hotel basically shows how these politicians are out of touch, and they got a major rude awakening because they thought they could talk their way out of this and spin their way out of this by trying to use some weasel words and trying to go out here and pacify the masses. But it's looking like the masses are not really hearing these politicians or any of the spin that they try to do as related to this situation. And the way the poll numbers are running for many of these blue politicians, this whole migrant situation may be the thing that leads to them being migrated out of the White House when many voters migrate to the polls. And when they migrate to the polls, they may be looking to go out here and migrate to voting for either red or independent candidates who they believe will represent them and represent an America First agenda. That may be the thing that could happen in this situation. It could lead to many people migrating to the polls like they did in 1994 and leading to a major revolution to this country, because as it looks like in this situation, when you put Americans last, they go first to protest, and if they continue to push buttons, this could lead to people going out here and going to the polls to put candidates in that will put Americans first, because what was presented at that news conference with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Adriana Espaillat, and Gerald Nadler was a slap in the face to New Yorkers, and again, open disrespect directed at New Yorkers. And the thing that I would love to see is New Yorkers take their respect by taking themselves to the polls and voting for other candidates, because it's clear these candidates have no interest in representing we the people. Now, if you want to pick up some of my positive fiction on the SJS Direct imprint and my men's issues books, you can find those titles in the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spencerella trilogy, my business novel, A Recipe for Success, my vampire novel, Eternal Night, and my black sorority novel, The Thetas. You can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashware's The iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me be able to continue making videos like this and be able to stay on the air, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle, Vampires Stalk the Darkness of the Eternal Night. Get your copy of Eternal Night in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com.
If you're interested in making six figures, then check out Ron Armstrong's 6-Figure PM program. In just 6 short weeks, you'll be trained to become a digital project manager, where you'll learn to build websites, apps, social media campaigns, and digital games. Best of all, you'll be the boss and manage your own team. No coding experience is required, and once you complete the program, you'll receive help in finding your first six-figure job. The fee for the program is extremely affordable, so check it out now at www.thesixfigurepm.com. Classes are starting soon, so you'll want to enroll as soon as possible. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.